Good evening, everyone, and I'm very glad to have got this opportunity to speak regarding transgender persons inclusion in the 10th edition of RISE World Summit. In fact, it's very interesting to note that this is the first time here in RISE that we'll be discussing about transgender persons inclusion. And good evening, everyone, and I'm very glad to have got this opportunity to speak regarding transgender persons inclusion in the 10th edition of RISE World Summit. In fact, it's very interesting to note that this is the first time here in RISE that we'll be discussing about transgender persons inclusion. And good evening, everyone, and I'm very glad to have got this opportunity to speak regarding transgender persons. Right. So yeah, very sorry for this little technical lag that we had. So once again, I'll be starting once again. So again, good evening to all of you, and thank you for being present for this session. Yes, I'm very happy and glad to be opening this discussion on transgender persons inclusion at the RISE World Summit's 10th edition. It's very interesting to note that we're discussing about transgender persons inclusion now at this stage where situation in India is very conducive to talking about inclusive spaces, and also the legal space in India has opened up for transgender persons inclusion as well. And I think in the opening plenary we heard about DI principles being adopted, people talking about the principles of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And there's also one instance, I remember one of the speakers on the panel spoke about Amazon coming out and embracing transgender persons employment drive, and going towards inclusion and diversity in their agenda, and beautifully making inclusive policies at work, which is definitely a welcome step. In India also, we have a lot of organizations that have opened up to the LGBTQ, the entire sexual minorities and the gender diverse umbrella. And it's definitely something that we all look forward to going further. However, when we talk about inclusion, we talk about gender inclusion per se, it's very important to understand that it's not just the binary lens that comes before us. When we talk about gender inclusion, when we talk about gender, using the gender lens in the development paradigm, most of the times what I have heard in my experience is people talking about women's issues. It's not even of course men are definitely not included, but it's only women's issues. We do not talk about something that goes beyond the two genders, the colors that have the Western perspective has brought in the use of pink and blue in this, and connoting a particular behavior, a particular color to a particular gender. And if I go back to my childhood days and remember instances, so any behavior that did not conform to the societal norms of gender was always disregarded, always ridiculed, and it was never encouraged. So we also each of us, in fact, must be remembering from our childhood times that there were names called to young boys who behaved like women. uh, More masculine women were always told to sober down, become mild, or talk in a way that only women should talk. So these gender norms have existed for ages, and we've been looking at the society only through that lens. But since 2014 in India, we are happy, we are fortunate to have had legal changes that brought about the recognition of a lens that goes beyond this binary perspective. And today I'm here to talk about that and share about that. Well, a little bit of background about the work that I have done, and what I'm presenting and bringing to this forum. So, I've worked with the transgender community since 2005 across India, and through a group called Anam Prem, which has been a volunteer network. And I'm very proud to say that after 17 years of this journey of being in this work, in this space, we have been able to create a big allyship network, of a network of allies that now is a network of 15 states in India, and which means practically half of the country is a part of this network. Half of the country's transgender persons, they are CBOs, and some of our friends who are allies are a part of this network. And we've been able to nurture this, to grow together with the community. And this network is something that has helped us to take further our journey of transgender inclusion. So allyship is a very strong, very strong, strong factor when we talk about inclusion, and it's also part of the umbrella terminologies that we are going to learn today. Now, the sustainable development goals that all the panels have been talking about, and we wonder, where does the gender lens come here. The gender lens means, I do not mean the gender lens where we look only at including women, but the gender lens where we are talking about going beyond the binaries, looking at those excluded communities that we do not see. So I thought that it was relevant to start this session with the hashtag I'm visible, because though we see transgender persons around us, in on forums, on television, now depicted in the media, is there a very strong sentiment and thought about including them in our lives, beginning from conversations that begin at home. Hmm. I just like to, read out what the former UN Chief Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said about including the LGBTQ community. So he said that we will only realize this vision of leaving no one behind if we reach all people regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. And ending marginalization and exclusion of LGBT people is a human rights priority, and it's a development imperative. But it has not been a reality. It has not been a reality because I'm not saying that there is a very systemic exclusion of transgender persons happening. It is happening, but the point I'm going to make here is that there's a lot of ignorance. There's a lack of awareness related to transgender issues. We do not understand the terminologies related to transgender persons or the LGBTQ umbrella. And even if we might have had friends in colleges who might have displayed gender non-conforming behavior, we have mocked at them, we have not mocked at them, but we have left them where they were, not intending to be there as a supportive group or a supportive friend. And even though we have, I mean, then I congratulate you on being an ally and being standing for the transgender person's rights in your situations. So I wanted to share about the group that I'm working with, and how we created a movement of allyship, having the principles of empathy and compassion as our base. So in 2005, when we reached out to the community to start with a prayer meet, we did not know what and how do you refer to a transgender person in India. So then we were only dealing with the Hijra community largely, who you see and find at signals, or who come to your homes for uh, marriage ceremonies or baby naming ceremonies, to ask for money, to bless the child, to bless the couple, to bless the family. And our immediate reaction and response has always been that, okay, let me give the XYZ amount of money and let the person go. So it has been that I don't want to stand this weird looking people here with me. But so exactly, so this also stems from uh, uh, our uh, um, our idea of conforming to the way gender is expressed, the way gender is understood, and the way societally what is accepted. So we have to break these barriers and look at perspectives, look at the community in a more accepting manner. And that's what we tried to do at Anam Prem when we did our first program in 2005, where only 9 transgender persons participated, and over the period of time, we were able to, reach out to more community in Mumbai. Then it extended to uh, Maharashtra, in Kolhapur, in Pune, and some other in Satara, and some other places in Maharashtra, and then over to some other states spilled over nearby, like Goa, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh. And we were able to then reach out and invite these people over to Mumbai for a yearly meet. Now, these yearly meets are meets that the community looks forward to, because these are the meets where mainstreaming, acceptance, inclusion is not just spoken about, it is embodied. How is it embodied? Because the community comes here, they feel welcome in the attires, in the expression, in the way they are. They feel accepted, they feel loved. And we have been doing a wonderful exercise called the Family Meets Initiative since 2010. So opening, I'm going to share about this a little later when I talk about the tools of inclusion. So the Family Meets Initiative has been about bringing conversations related to inclusion at home, uh, communicating gender and respect for individual and dignity to younger generations, to children who don't know what to refer to a transgender person when they see them, who may misgender a person, and and use the wrong kind of pronouns for the individual, without understanding that how much it hurts their dignity. So yes, so it has been this journey that also led to the creation and the design of India's first trans and hijra empowerment mela in 2016 in Mumbai. This Mela saw participation of 30 transgender entrepreneurs from across India. And without we realizing what allyship could do, we were here curating this huge Mela, which saw footfalls of 1,500 people. I wish I could show you a video related to that, but I'll definitely share a link in the panel for all of you to see. And yeah, so this mela has been a yearly feature since 2016, where we have the participation of trans community as entrepreneurs, and we have participation of the mainstream population, who come to the mela as visitors. So it's like providing direct market linkage and market access to the transgender entrepreneur community. So also this mela, what we could do was, those persons, those transgender individuals who were involved in occupations like begging or sex work, or who were only working with the NGOs, the trans-led NGOs, they got an opportunity to try out a different means of livelihood, and then see for themselves whether, whether they wanted to continue with their entrepreneurships, whether it led somewhere, whether it gave them different kind of linkages, whether it led to some job opportunities. So it was a holistic, a very beautiful experience for all of us. And another wonderful one wonderful experience was that we introduced food stalls, that were food stalls that were manned by transgender persons, and also the snacks and the other food that was prepared by transgender persons. And in a record time of 2 hours, uh, what we found was that all the food stalls were completely sold out. So it was such a thrilling and a very encouraging experience for the transgender entrepreneurs, also for us, all of us who were organizing this. So this led to, this mela led to getting for I mean, it paved way for the next mela. And then we had a lot of livelihood consultations, where we had partners such as NSDC come over, Mavim come over. So MSME sector companies come over and talk and understand about the issues that were issues of inclusion of transgender persons in livelihoods. So this has been the journey in 2020. Of course, 2020 COVID hit all of us, and we could not take anything forward on the ground, though the allyship network helped us to reach transgender persons who were in different states, in different situations, and reach them help in whichever small way that we could. So I'm glad that in that period we were also able to do some advocacy with the central government, and entirely operate on a level that we could gather data from the whole of India, all the transgender persons who are applying for this particular assistance. And that assistance, that advocacy, that wonderful advocacy happened through a network of transgender persons who was just connected on a WhatsApp group, and an allyship network that existed, and the support system that already existed. So I'm bringing in the point that for inclusion to happen, allyship is very crucial. Allies need to be celebrated, need to be accepted by the community as well. So that's it has been this journey and this story of allyship with Anam Prem as a platform, and it has been 17 years that we've been able to work with the community. So coming from there, we realized that post 2020, since COVID had affected our entrepreneurship initiatives and our Mela and everything, we decided that we'll go on an online medium and encourage those transgender entrepreneurs who want to continue with their ventures, and provide them with some kind of virtual support, which would be mentoring support, which would be some kind of a small seed fund to help their ventures, and curate another Mela to give them exposure to market linkages, alongside develop their businesses, give them more business ideas, help develop their brand. And I'm very happy to share that today on this in this 10th edition of Rise, we have our trans entrepreneur Priyanka, who has her booth in the entrepreneur section, and her brand is Priyanka's Collection. Priyanka has also joined us today. Can she just say hi and introduce herself and just talk about her booth a little bit?
Hello, namaste everyone. I am Priyanka. I am from Malda town, West Bengal. Malda is a very small town. It's 350 kilometers from Kolkata. And we formed a CVO on 2012, and we got a project. It was quite a big project. Its name is Project Pehchan. So we started with that project. Then after that, on 2015, the project was end, and then we all the transgender person who were part of the project, they all are unemployed. So we thought we should do something for our livelihood. Then we decided to form a self-help group, and we formed that, and we started making jute product like jute bags, jute water bottle bags, which all are made by jute. And we also making the oxidized jewelry like earrings and something. And recently, last Anam Prem, we launched our cotton clothes bags. Then we started, and now we are sticked on the jute product and the cotton product, and also oxidized jewelry. So please, you can see my our product in my booth. So please do visit.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Priyanka. Triza has already shared the link to Priyanka's booth. So please make time and visit Priyanka's booth. If you have any orders from her, please do connect with her. She's provided her phone number and her email address. So yes, I'm extremely happy to have you, Priyanka. Yeah, thank you so much for joining. And I'll again
Thank you, ma'am.
call you for some inputs. Yes, thank you, Priyanka. So so like Priyanka, we have had five other trans entrepreneurs who we wanted to support, who were continuing with their entrepreneurial ventures, and we started this platform called the COCOON, which stands for Connect, Collaborate, and Network. And it is India's first platform for transgender entrepreneurships incubation. Currently, we are only mentoring and facilitating trainings and supporting them. We've not full-fledgedly started incubating our trans entrepreneurs, but the support has been provided for last 1 year with their branding, with social media marketing, with establishing their social media contacts, markets, and giving them exposure to wherever it has been possible, connecting them to mainstream melas and any kind of exposures that we have. And we are very happy that out of these five entrepreneurs, one is Priyanka, who is here with us today. Ritu, who is a fashion, who wanted to establish a fashion brand that caters to LGBTQ community. So Ritu is also a faculty at Envisage Institute of Design and Technology, and I'm very happy that Ritu has also taken their flight from the COCOON platform. So yes, so that has been our journey with the COCOON and Anam Prem allyship platforms. So now coming to the entire process of inclusion, we'll need to understand certain terminologies and acquaint ourselves with the words that we generally hear that are related to trans persons, but we do not exactly understand or we do not exactly know what those exactly stand for. So I'll just start with demystifying some terminologies, like how we interchangeably use sex and gender, and what gender identity is. So sex, of course, we understand sex as something that is biological, and gender is an intrinsic sense of being, the person's feeling, the person's emotion, what a person feels like. So to use crude terms to this, sex is something that they say is between your legs, but gender is something that is between your two ears. It's between your heart, your mind, your sense of being entirely. And gender identity is what you want to express, how the way you express yourself, uh, what you believe yourself to be, despite what is your sex assigned at birth. Now LGBTQ and transgender persons are often termed as one umbrella identity. It's always said, LGBTQ issues, LGBTQ issues and transgender persons, but it's not the same. We need to understand that LGBTQ are, it's a whole term that includes all kinds of sexual and gender minorities. But when we look at each term separately, the terms LGB, lesbian, gay, and bisexual, stand for sexual minorities who here the question is of sexual orientation. Here the identities are related to sexual orientation. When we talk about transgender persons, it's related to a gender identity. And when we say what is Q, it's queer, which includes all of these identities. It's a very fluid term. It largely denotes something that deviates from the norm. So it could be used interchangeably while using any of these terminologies related to gender divergence, right? I stands for intersex. So intersex persons are those individuals who display both, who may or may not, who may have gender deformities, or who may have both secondary sexual characteristics. And asexual persons are persons who do not identify, I mean, who do not have any uh, sexual feelings, who do not feel that they are attracted to any particular sex. And then there is also pansexuality, who identify with being attracted to both sexes, to even all kinds of gender diverse individuals. And the plus stands for anything that can be added to this paradigm. So transgender persons within this entire umbrella is also an umbrella term. The LGBTQ community is a larger community. Within that, there is a community called transgender persons, which is related to gender identity. And within the transgender umbrella, then there are trans men, there are trans women, then there are socio-cultural identities, like in India or in Asia mostly, but in India we know as the Hijra persons, the Kinnars, the Ravanis, then Kothi community. So all these are geographically defined, like the Ravanis are from the south, and Hijras largely here in Mumbai. Kinnar, the terminology Kinnar is largely used in North India, and there are different connotations to refer to transgender persons in Northeast also. So now, what do we mean by the word transgender? Transgender, and what the Indian law talks about the definition of transgender. It's very important to understand this, because often, as we said, we've already understood sex. We've differentiated the clinical aspect of sex and understood the societal connotations of gender. So it's similarly, it's very crucial to understand that what in the Indian law, how gender and transgender persons are perceived, right? So basically, the definition of transgender is any person who does not conform to the sex assigned at birth. So if you are a male sex assigned at birth and you do not conform to that identity, you may be, I mean, you are included in the larger, wider term of transgender umbrella. Now, within the transgender umbrella, you can choose to identify as a trans woman, you can choose to identify as a hijra person, you can choose to identify as a kinner, depending on which context you are coming from. So, when an individual is female sex assigned at birth, and the individual does not identify with that sex assigned at birth and identifies with the male gender, that individual, and expresses themselves as a male, that individual is referred to as trans man, right? As per the Indian law, the Indian Act, we identify transgender person as an umbrella terminology, and we also include trans men, trans women, we include intersex persons, we include all the social cultural identities that uh, include the gender diverse population across India. So, which is itself a very strong step, that we have included a broader umbrella rather than catering only to a group of people, and who were most visible. So if you look at the census figures, the census 2011 puts the figure of transgender persons as 4.88 lakh persons across India. Sadly, this figure is completely, it's a misinformation, and it has, the census happened prior to 2011, where we did not know how to talk about transgender persons, we did not know how to define transgender persons, or how to identify them, how to map them. So the group that census has identified is largely the group that was the visible population, the socio-cultural communities like the Joktis, the Aravanis, the Hijras. And also in the larger document, you will find that this figure of 4.88 lakh across India has been included under the figure of male population. So that's also a very sad part. However, the good part is that census 2020-2021 has taken note of the Transgender Persons Act, has taken note of the transgender persons definition, and we hope that um, we'll have estimates of the figure of the new figure soon, which will be close to the real figure. But I'm not sure if it's going to reflect the entire population, because with transgender identities, there are also issues of opening out and accepting and asserting them, and coming out and saying that yes, you identify as trans person. Sometimes these identities are, sometimes largely these identities are very remain very hidden. So that's about the percentage, the population in India. Now, just coming to the legal framework of what has been happening in the Indian scenario. So in 2014, uh, there is this we had this National Legal Services Authority of India versus Union of India writ petition, and a wonderful judgment by Justice K.S. Radhakrishnan and Justice A.K. Sikri. Anybody who is interested in law, please go through this. It's a lovely, it's a piece of work. It should be read, and it's very beautifully and broadly interpreted. And this Nalsa judgment, it has been a historical, it has been a revolutionary thing. It has been an historical judgment, in the sense that it has primarily, broken the gender binary. It has recognized a transgender person as a third gender apart from the two genders that the society and politics and socially, politically, and legally accepted genders. So it did that. The second most important part that the Nalsa judgment did was it asserted self-perceived gender identity to be a right of individuals. So now gender was not what was clinically defined. What you go to a doctor and you find out, oh, this baby is a male child, is a female child. Oh, or somebody, like how they show in movies ki, okay, the child is born and they understand the child is a transgender person. So that's a very very wrong depiction of how we've understood transgender persons, and made it so clinical, and made it so based on biological uh, factors. However, being transgender is about your self perceived gender identity, which the Nalsa judgment very strongly has put forth. And after Nalsa, the most interesting part was that Nalsa came out in 2014. In the same year, in 2014 December, there was a private member's bill by a Rajya Sabha MP, bill for transgender persons act, protection of rights act, right? And it got a throbbing majority in the Rajya Sabha. It was passed in the Rajya Sabha. Post which the government set out its own bill, which is called the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Bill 2016, which was called 2016. And that bill received a lot of public flag, and it raised a political movement of transgender persons across India. What wonderful thing it did was it brought to the surface all the identities that were not so much in discussion. So trans men's movement, there has been movement of trans women, there has been a beautiful movement of all kinds of intersex population and all gender diverse populations. So with a lot of deliberations with the center regarding this act, and considering having consultations in all different states, bringing the community together, we now have the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019, which got the presidential assent in December 2019, and it came into force in India in 2020 on 10th of January. Now, this is a very, 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 very significant step, because when there is an act in place, an act means that yes, it has been passed by both the houses of the parliament, it has been signed, assented by the president of India, and therefore it has tremendous value. And any kind of violation is completely unconstitutional. So all the rights of transgender persons became to be codified, though the act is still a very what do you say, a very basic document right now, the one that we have in India. It will take few more years for this act to modify, for this act to undergo changes and suit the the present times. However, it also has some beautiful takeaways, and that has one thing out of which has been that the act has also asserted self-perceived gender identity to be a right of every individual. And uh, uh, and uh, and apart from the transgender person's definition that I've just shared with you, that it includes all the identities, what the act has done is the act has said that any kind of surgical therapy, surgeries on your body, hormone therapy, any kind of these therapies that add to your external features conforming to a particular gender. So these surgeries, they have separated it out, they have separated it out from the transgender person's definition. So what it means to say is that your perceived identity is what is your identity. You need not conform to any kind of medical procedures, any kind of undergo any kind of physiological changes to conform to a particular gender. And if the person perceives themselves in a different identity than what is their sex assigned at birth, then the person can identify themselves as a transgender. So there is also a transgender person certificate that the act mandates for every transgender person to have, and the certificate does not have any kind of a medical assessment of the person. So that's a wonderful takeaway from here. Also, the transgender person has been given a right to revise their gender in the certificate. Now, the revision of the gender, however, is based on them undergoing a gender surgery and completely transitioning to the other gender. So these are the two things. Of course, the act also talks about anti-discrimination at workplace. So organizations need to be aware that there is an act in place that talks about anti-discriminatory policies at workplace, in educational institutions, And it also talks about right of residence to transgender persons. So no parent can say ki, okay, you do not identify, I mean, you do not conform to the gender norms of the society, and you are a disgrace to our family, and I shun you out of the house. So even if they say that, I have a right to, appeal to the court of law and fight for my legal right, which has been very clearly mentioned in this. And then there is obligation of on educational institutions also to provide for inclusive education to transgender persons. So now the act has come into place. We know that we have got legal safeguards for transgender persons, some legal obligations. Then there are some offenses and penalties that it speaks about, that no kind of physical, sexual, or verbal abuse should be done against transgender persons, and there are penalties to these offenses. However, interestingly, the act has not been able to still, bring about much change at the level of governance. We do have a National Institute of Social Defense that is look and Ministry of social justice that is taking care of transgender persons portfolio at the national level. In various states there are welfare boards being formed. So the movement on paper and the movement in practice is also there, but the community still is very, very invisible. It's very, very invisible because despite knowing that now we have a legally recognized gender, we are not able to extend that and vocally say it out loud, that yes, we are open to, we are welcoming of transgender persons, we are welcoming of the LGBTQ populations to be a part of our organizations, our educational institutions, and we will make sure whatever in our capacity to create those situations and an enabling environment that gives them an atmosphere of progress, positivity, and learning. Right. So yes. So how our question is that how do we create this how do we bring about this inclusion? Now, we have an enabling legal point of view, we have some obligations, and however we do not know what we have to do, we can do in our capacity to bring these conversations, open these conversations, and create those inclusive spaces. Right. So let's look at that. So when we talk about inclusive spaces, what spaces come to our minds? So it could be anything. It could be family, it could be it could be your home, it could be communities, it could be it could be educational institutions, it could be public spaces, it could be recreational spaces, it could be religious spaces, and in all these spaces, uh, do we find that any vocal acceptance of, I mean, any effort that has gone to vocally accept the community? So why do we need to create these inclusive spaces? Now we may question that, okay, there is a legal there's a law in place, then there are these policies, companies are going for DNI and bringing in inclusive policies, they're writing in their books about inclusion. So why exactly we need to create, I mean, why did there needs to be more effort on the ground, and why people need to be sensitized? So it's often because just imagine a situation that you were a trans person, and you were told to come to a office and conform to the official rules, which do not allow you to express yourself in the way you look at yourself. You want to be told, you're told to, to behave in a particular manner, and to conform to that particular rule and conduct of that particular assembly where you are a part of. So it has often seen that, so such experiences which invite hostility from others, so they put a lot of pressure on transgender individuals to maintain or to manage their identities in social settings, and this could include educational institutions, workplace, wherever. And these experiences, they add to your trauma, they add to your psychological responses, and they have devastating consequences on your mental, emotional well-being, on your mental health, and any kind of holistic individual development, right? So despite a public awareness, it's seen that, we are ill-equipped to create these inclusive spaces, because naturally lack of knowledge, something that we do not have a lived experience of, we're not able to relate to it, and create that particular space for that particular for inclusion. So uh, uh, so I like to share one beautiful tool and one beautiful example and a sharing and a story from our past experiences of how we have been able to bridge this gap and create a beautiful dialogue with the community for its mainstreaming. So in 2010, we started with something called as a family meet experiment. Okay, now family meets experiment meant that from our group, there were certain families who were willing to host a group of who were willing to host, or rather who were willing to participate in this experiment, and they would invite a group of trans persons over for a meal, or for a chat, and just to just like how friends visit our home. So it would be an interaction that would not be bound by any kind of barriers. It would be a personal space. So in 2010, we had 10 families who were willing to participate, and around about 30 trans persons from across Mumbai who were willing to participate in this experiment and see for themselves of what were the repercussions, or how where did it lead to, right? So these 10 families invited groups of small groups of trans persons over to their homes, and they mapped the entire interface that a transgender person would have with with any kind of community. So while the transgender person came to my home, the person would meet the watchman, the security guards, would meet somebody in my building, would meet my neighbors, and utmost care was taken that the person was felt comfortable, that the community that the person was being hosted was sensitized, that yes, every individual's dignity is of crucial importance, and there would be no absolutely zero tolerance towards anything that would be said that would be transphobic, that would hurt their sentiments, or that would be just to satisfy somebody else's curiosity. So after setting up these uh, taking care of the situation, these family meets took place, and what led to was a beautiful culmination of experience where there were deep sharings, where transgender persons and their families that they had met, they had developed such lovely bonds, and they felt that yes, we were home. So we were home, we belonged to different so these were people who had migrated from uh, many other states and rural interior areas, and who had come down to Mumbai, who were living in Mumbai, and meeting these families made them feel ki, "Arey, we have a house here, we have a home, we have somewhere we call our own." And these people also came to drop us down, drop us till the gate, so that we were taken care of. And that emotion, that feeling of belonging, is that feeling that yes, I am invited with the right intent. I'm invited wholeheartedly. I'm invited by a person who has thought about everything for me. So that is the first step of communicating acceptance, communicating intent, communicating willingness to participate in an equal process of learning, and creating that inclusive space. So it's not a one way mechanism. We need to understand that it's not just because that we have the act now, but inclusion needs to be looked at as a rights based perspective. It's not that somebody is creating an inclusive space for somebody else. It's the person uh, that needs to be included also has to work towards it. It's a two-way street. It does, the traffic does not flow just one way. And and what is created, the experience that gets created from this leads to many other very interesting takeaways, these meets meant that they were creating sensitization and awareness, not just with one person but with the entire family, across gender, across age. So it was being communicated to the children in that family that yes, We have these individuals who are coming home who have been used, I mean, who we have seen have been referred with derogatory names outside, but at my home, at my family, in my house, we are inviting them for a cup of tea, having meals with them, talking to them, they are talking to us, and it's so much fun. And what they have been referred to as, if they were trans women, they were referred to as sisters, and relationships like, yes, this is my aunt, she's my mother's sister, and these things percolated. So these were very, very strong takeaways for us, because we are it's the law is setting up a background for a legal context of acceptance and inclusion. However, the societal preparedness is of paramount significance in the laws being percolated in the society. So unless our younger generations know how they talk to people, how they treat people with dignity, inclusion will not flow very easily. So yes, so the family meet experiment has been one of our very significant tools of bringing about inclusion. So in schools, colleges, if you could, encourage uh, a few families, a few students to take up inviting trans persons over to their homes, and then coming out and sharing with a larger forum how that interaction went. The sharing it should be in fact a two-way process, where both the transgender persons also share what they felt, primarily share what they felt, what they were expecting, and what the family has also experienced. So how it led to breaking of stereotypes, how it led to deeper connections. And often, if sessions like these that we are having today, and these will create something, a space in your mind ki, yes, something needs to be done. But deeper interactions with the community will create those strong memories of strong it will create an impact, and that will lead to creating an ally and a support system. So family meets is a very strong tool, and we at Anam Prem offer these family meets to any organizations who want to be a part of it. And we definitely, since it's built up from a volunteer movement, and we have trans persons participating in it from all over, in Mumbai, in Pune, in Kolhapur, in we could do it in Madhya Pradesh last year. So if you are in any of these places, or even if you are not in any of in anywhere in India, we would be happy to facilitate family meets for you, and through our networks that is there across India. But surely, to bring conversations to the dinner table is crucial. It should not just remain in offices. Organizations that are wanting DE&I in their agenda, I mean, apart from the other policy level changes that they are going for, it's important to consider that the organizations, students, employees, staff, everybody are people who are coming from a social context, and entering that social context to bring about a change will be crucial. So yes, family meets is a very strong tool in that regard. Deepak, I now invite you to share that small video of family meets that we have, so that it'll give us a clear idea of how these family meets take place.
मुंबई के आनंद सिंह के परिवार में इंतजार हो रहा है दो खास मेहमानों का, और ये खास मेहमान हैं श्रेया और उर्मी, जो किन्नर हैं। जहां आमतौर पर ट्रांसजेंडर्स को स्वीकारने में खुद उनके परिवार वाले हिचकिचाते हैं, वहीं उर्मी और श्रेया को इस परिवार से प्यार और अपनापन दोनों मिल रहा है।
वो हमें मिलने आते हैं, हमारी सुख दुख हम उससे बांटते हैं, वो अपना सुख दुख बांटते हैं, तो एक हिस्सा है हमारा।
ये मेरी फैमिली नहीं है, पर ये मेरे फैमिली से बहुत ज्यादा है, क्योंकि इन लोग सब कुछ जानते हैं मेरे बारे में, मुझे एक्सेप्ट करते हैं मैं जैसी हूँ वैसी।
समाज के तीसरे वर्ग को समाज की मुख्य धारा से जोड़ने का ये बेहतरीन काम कर रहा है अनाम प्रेम।
अनाम प्रेम एक परिवार है, एक विचारधारा है, जहाँ पर एक विचार के लोग इकट्ठे आकर कुछ काम करना चाहते हैं। और इस विचारधारा का जो बेस प्रोसेस है वो ये है कि प्यार, लव इज एन अल्टीमेट सोल्यूशन टू ऑल द कॉन्फ्लिक्ट।
ऐसे कई परिवार हैं जो आज किन्नरों से मिलते जुलते हैं, उनके साथ एक रिश्ता कायम करते हैं, और तीसरे वर्ग के लोगों के साथ नजदीकी से मिलने जुलने के बाद उनके जज्बातों, उनकी तकलीफों को उन्होंने इंसानी तौर पर समझना शुरू किया है।
मेरे मन में एक घृणा थी, उनके लिए एक खौफ था, और वो किस कारण था वो पता नहीं था। लेकिन एक मोड़ पे ऐसे आ गया कि जहाँ पे फर्स्ट टाइम मैं किसी जगह से मिला और उससे मैंने इंटरेक्ट किया, तब मेरे अंदर बहुत ज्यादा परिवर्तन आ गया उसी दिन। क्योंकि मैंने सोचा कि ये तो एकदम टोटली जैसे हम आप है वैसे ही है।
हमारे समाज में तीसरे वर्ग की जिंदगी तभी बेहतर बन सकती है जब समाज अपनी सोच बदले।
Thank you, Deepak, for that wonderful video that you played, and it was Satyameva Jayate episode of accepting alternative sexualities that had covered the family meets experiment, and we have been able to do it for the last it's been 13 years that we've been doing these family meets all across wherever we have our networks, and it has been truly an amazing experience. Now I'd like to move forward to the other tool that I wanted to discuss, and what we have used as a tool for building deeper connects again, and dissolving our stereotypes and building new perspectives. So this has been a human library experiment. You must have heard of the human library, which is just a thing from Denmark. It has begun in Denmark. The way we have adopted it to our context and our initiative is that we call it Let's Talk the Human Books, where we bring in transgender individuals with their independent stories, with their individual stories, and they share these stories with a small group of audience, a very small group of audience consisting to not more than 10 individuals, and an interaction time of 30 to 35 or to 40 minutes is given, where the individuals shares the stories and the audience interacts and asks questions. So this is also has been a very important medium of connecting, especially at with students. So we have been doing these human library events at our yearly melas, which has got an amazing experience. I mean, which has always received a very good response. So interactions that were planned for 30 minutes would always spill over and go to 40-45 minutes, 50 minutes, where people wanted to talk to trans individuals, connect with them, deeply connect with them and understand their issues. And it was always relatable, and it was very cathartic for the trans persons also to come out and share stories, get noticed, get visible. Last year we were able to do this at the D.Y. Patil International University in Pune, where around 200 students interacted with about 10 to 12 transgender books in sessions of 40 minutes each, and each individual would speak to 10 students, share their story, ask questions, address these questions. So these tools open up spaces to talk, to share ideas, to understand, and it also encourages any transgender, any kind of any hidden see any closeted person to come out and share ki, yes, this experience is what I have also been going through, but I've not had that space to talk, to share, because nobody else understood me. But yes, there is somebody, a role model, coming to my college, coming to my institute and talking about it. Oh yes, ye mera bhi story hai, this is my story and I can talk about it. Now these were two important tools I wanted to share, and now a few do's and don'ts that we need to keep in mind when we are designing inclusive spaces, when we are designing any kind of interactions with the community. So number one is that we need to stop making assumptions about somebody's gender based on the way they dress, the way they express, and the way based on their appearance. um, Using right kind of language, the etiquettes to be followed while talking to transgender person includes using the right kind of language with transgender individuals. So what would be the first step when you see somebody who is dressed up in a particular attire, and so what would we do is assume ki, okay, the person is dressed up as a female, so it's very evident, it's very natural that let me refer to that person as a female and call her she or her. But it's always polite to go to any individual and ask that, yes, what is your preferred gender, before assuming that the person that this person belongs to an XYZ gender. So that would be the most polite way of referring to any individual before they start before starting conversations. Of course, it's very important to have a gender neutral sanitation spaces, bathroom spaces, or gender neutral toilets in the institutions that we're talking about, creating these inclusive spaces, whether it's educational institution, whether it is organizations, whether it is offices. Now, there was a 2017 Swachh Bharat Mission directive that said that transgender individuals could use any of the toilets that were meant for men and women. But what it did not specify, I mean, what it did not have, it seemed it's a very hollow directive, because it did not talk about privacy, it did not talk about dignity of transgender individuals, it did not talk about safety of transgender individuals who were, accessing toilets matching their gender preferences. It did not talk about how others would treat them in those toilets. So, keeping these things in mind, it's very important to create that space, that safe space for something that is so personal. Something, going to toilet is a need for everybody, but if I do not have if I identify as a trans person, I do not have a space which I can call my own, which is for such a personal use, then I mean, I don't feel any regard for myself in that particular space, whether it's a school, it's a college, it's a public institution, or anything for that matter. I'll just share very quickly that in Chhattisgarh, when we were working on accessible sanitation for persons with disability and transgender persons, we had a deeper group interaction with young trans persons in the age of 18 to 23, who shared that when they were in school, because there were no toilets, there were no toilets, no gender neutral toilets. They were forced, of course, they had to go to toilets that were meant for boys, but they used to hold their pee and not go to the toilets with the fear of their seniors bullying them because of their gender non-conforming behavior. This has led to children dropping out of schools. So this is just a story of a rural Chhattisgarh. Here, when we come to public spaces, we're talking about transgender toilets in Mumbai. There have been transgender toilets at public spaces in some of the cities in India, but it has not been taken up so strongly at a policy level. Um, we are advocating for it, but it is my honest urge to any of the organizations that are part of this conversation today, that when we're talking at inclusion, we need to consider the physical space as well, and we need to make it out loud inclusive. Transphobic jokes or comments need to be completely, there has to be zero tolerance policy, and they cannot be encouraged in any way. So there has been so much of media portrayal of referring to transgender persons, the very famous Nana Patekar's dialogue, which we all know in Hindi, which talks about, which derogatorily looks at the Hijra community, and it limits them to just a behavior of clapping of hands. So these need to be put down. We need to, openly come out and not use these terms, and also discourage people who are using them, and referring to bringing in these references. And dignity is, of course, very crucial to creating any kind of inclusive space. It's the dignity, universal values of love, compassion are the most important when we invite somebody over, whether to work with us, whether to it could be home. So we need to have these things at heart before we begin our process of inclusion. So it's also very important that when we are referring to any audience, we need not segregate them as ladies and gentlemen, women and men. It could be a very gender neutral reference, such as my dear friends, folks, or the respected dais, or respected audience. So it is important to not misgender anybody. It's very, very crucial, and ये बातें हैं जो हमको याद रखनी है, and take this forward. Priyanka also would have, I mean, because we're short of time, I'm not taking this experience sharing from her, which was relating to her visit to somebody's home, but we'll keep it at that. And I think I'll close on a happy note that yes, it's very important that we have a Transgender Persons Act in India now. It's uh, it's absolutely enforcing the ideals of inclusion and acceptance, but we need to have inclusive communities, we need to have a strong allyship, we need to have inclusive hearts to open up to this change, embrace this change, and walk with the community on this path, right? And with this, thank you very much for joining in. Deepak, I would want you to show the last video, which would be the concluding video from my side. Before we have this song, I'll just share that this song marks the first Marathi song which was sung by transgender persons who are not from a classical or a professionally singing background. However, this was aired on Doordarshan Sahyadri in 2021 on 26th of January on the Republic Day. It speaks about citizenship rights that transgender persons have received after the Transgender Persons Act came into place. The dance choreography is also done by a transgender dance group, the Dancing Queens, who were a part of this, and all the actors, all the main characters who have played character roles in this song are transgender individuals. So I invite you all to with me to watch this small Marathi song that was aired on Doordarshan Sahyadri on 26th January Republic Day last year. Thank you. So yeah, we have
नमस्कार.
that.
आज गणतंत्र दिनी अनाम प्रेम परिवारातर्फे बृहन्नडांनी म्हणजेच तृतीयपंथीयांनी गायलेले आनंदाचे गीत सादर करीत आहोत. माझ्या माहितीप्रमाणे दूरदर्शनवर हा पहिलाच असा बृहन्नडेचा बृहत्सव आहे. आजवर बृहन्नडांनीही भारतीय संविधानातील उद्देशिका आम्ही भारतातील लोक इतर जनांप्रमाणेच श्रद्धेने म्हटली. यातील आम्ही या शब्दात तृतीयपंथीयांचा उल्लेख नव्हता. ब्रिटिश साहेबांनी केलेल्या या कायद्यात अगदी भारतीय दंड संहितेत सुद्धा तृतीयपंथीयांचा उल्लेख ऐकिवात नाही. उल्लेख आहे फक्त स्त्री आणि पुरुष यांचा. तृतीयपंथी आणि इतर कार्यकर्त्यांच्या अनेक वर्षांच्या अथक प्रयत्नांना यश आले आणि 2019 साली तृतीयपंथीयांसाठी आला एक स्वतंत्र कायदा, जो 10 जानेवारी 2020 ला देशभर लागू झाला. ब्रिटिशांना जे जमले नाही ते विद्यमान शासनाने केले. हा कायदा आला आणि तृतीयपंथीयांना एक वेगळी ओळख मिळाली. आज केरळ आणि छत्तीसगड यांच्यासारख्या राज्यांनी तर तृतीयपंथीयांना सामावून घेणारे त्यांच्या शिक्षणाच्या आणि रोजगाराच्या बाबतीत धोरणात्मक निर्णय घेणे सुरू केले आहे. या क्षणी मला केशवसुतांच्या तुतारी या कवितेतील काही ओळी आठवतात. एक तुतारी द्याम जाणून, एक तुतारी द्याम जाणून, जुने जाऊ द्या मरणा लागुनी, जाळुनी किंवा पुरुनी टाका, सडत न एक्या ठाई ठाका, सावध ऐका पुढल्या हाका, खांद्यास चला खांदा भिडवुनी, एक तुतारी द्याम जाणून. म्हणून हा बृहत्सव काही बृहन्नडा सादर करीत आहेत.
गणतंत्र झाला भारत तरी गणात आम्ही नवतो. संविधान हे अधिकार सांगते तरीही वंचित होतो. संविधान हे अधिकार सांगते तरीही वंचित होतो. किन्नर म्हणून समाजातही जागा नव्हती आम्हा. हा जन्मला भला ऐसा हा झाला का हो गुन्हा. हा झाला का हो गुन्हा. या देशाचे असुनी नागरिक अस्तित्वात चिन्हवतो. या देशाचे असुनी नागरिक अस्तित्वात चिन्हवतो. प्रेमे घडता स्थिती बदलली सरकाराने दखल घेतली. भारत माता प्रसन्न होता अधिकारी ल्यालो. भारतीय झालो. भारतीय झालो. भारतीय झालो. बघता बघता समाजासही मान्य मी झालो. आज आनंदानाही सीमा जनगण गीत म्हणा. जनगण गीत म्हणा. जनगण गीत म्हणा.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us today for this session. I consider that each of you have joined for this session to be a trans ally and will be in this journey for transgender inclusion. And we all have shared that similar intent that yes, at the heart of inclusion, we need to have empathy. And yes, thank you so much for being with us today. And I can be reached on my personal Gmail for anything, for any other queries or any other questions that you have. And thank you, Priyanka, for being here with us. Without, how can there be inclusion without a transgender person being in the panel? So I'm sorry we could not discuss in detail regarding you, but I'm glad that you are able to put up your booth here at the RISE Summit. And heartiest congratulations to you and your efforts, and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I just want to say that it can happen only for Anam Prem and COCOON. So thank you so much for COCOON and Anam Prem.
Thank you, Priyanka. Thank you, Sriza. Thank you, everyone.